The Lucy show opens with Lucy once again in pursuit of a new goal. This time, the stakes seem higher than usual. Lucy's already seen her fair share of failures and successes, but this new opportunity seems like one she simply cannot afford to miss. The episode begins with Lucy coming across an event, perhaps a charity gala, a business opportunity, or a new job that she immediately decides is her big break. Her eyes light up as she imagines how this will finally be her moment to shine, to prove once and for all that she is capable of greatness. There's a sense of grandiosity in her mind, as she believes that this situation will finally align all her efforts and show people what she's really made of. As always, Lucy is driven by her ambition, but her impulsive nature often leads her to dive into situations without fully understanding what she's getting into. The situation in question appears to be high stakes, involving a group of important people or a high-profile event, and Lucy feels a pressure to make a great impression. Despite her lack of preparation or experience with the intricacies of the event, she plunges in, convinced that she can handle whatever comes her way. Vivian, as always, serves as the voice of reason, cautioning Lucy against biting off more than she can chew. She gently reminds Lucy that while it's great to aim high, she should at least do some research or preparation before committing to something that could have serious repercussions. Lucy, however, brushes off Vivian's warnings with her usual confidence, insisting that she doesn't need to overthink things. This sense of overconfidence, while it often leads to trouble, is one of the things that makes Lucy such a compelling character. She doesn't know when to stop, and that relentless energy drives both the comedy and the plot of the show. As Lucy steps into this new environment, it becomes quickly clear that she is out of her depth. The people she meets are polished, professional, and seem to have everything under control, exactly the kind of people Lucy strives to impress. But instead of backing down or admitting that she's not equipped for the situation, Lucy throws herself into it headfirst, trying to act as if she belongs. This leads to a series of hilarious misunderstandings and awkward moments, where Lucy overcompensates in an attempt to maintain the illusion that she's just as capable as everyone else. She makes promises she can't keep, answers questions she doesn't fully understand, and tries to participate in conversations she's not prepared for. As the episode progresses, Lucy's attempts to keep up her facade only make things worse. What started as a minor misunderstanding quickly snowballs into a full-blown series of chaotic events. She misinterprets social cues, mistakenly thinks she's been given responsibilities she hasn't, and ends up inadvertently causing confusion for the people around her. Despite the mounting issues, Lucy remains optimistic and determined, believing that her charisma and good intentions will carry her through. Vivian, on the other hand, continues to watch in disbelief, offering advice that Lucy ignores and stepping in when things get too out of hand. It's clear that Vivian, while still supportive, has a hard time watching Lucy dig herself deeper into a hole. Meanwhile, the supporting characters, whether they are co-workers, acquaintances, or others at the event, begin to take notice of Lucy's increasingly erratic behavior. Some are impressed by her boldness, others are confused by her lack of understanding, and a few are downright frustrated by her incompetence. But Lucy, true to form, brushes off the growing tension around her, convinced that everything will work out in the end. At the midpoint of the episode, the situation reaches a tipping point. Lucy finds herself in the middle of a critical moment, perhaps a big presentation, a crucial conversation, or an important decision where her previous mistakes finally come to a head. It's here that she realizes just how out of her depth she truly is, and for the first time in the episode, she begins to second-guess her approach. However, instead of admitting defeat or trying to escape the situation, Lucy doubles down. She decides to embrace her mistakes, weaving them into an even more elaborate story, hoping that by owning her blunders, she will somehow manage to win over the crowd. Her increasingly ridiculous and convoluted explanations add to the comedy of the situation, as she starts to spin a web of half-truths and over-the-top justifications. As the climax builds, Lucy's performance becomes even more frantic and desperate. The more she tries to fix things, the worse they get. She inadvertently causes a mix-up, creates more confusion, and ends up in a situation where she has to come up with a completely new plan to salvage everything. This marks the peak of the episode's humor as Lucy desperately improvises to keep things from falling apart completely. The tension reaches its highest point when Lucy finds herself in a position where it seems like everything is going to crash down around her. The important people she's been trying to impress are now fully aware of her blunders, and the moment of reckoning has arrived. In typical Lucy fashion, she manages to pull off a miracle of sorts, turning her tangled web of mistakes into an improbable, if not entirely plausible, solution. It's not the perfect resolution, and it's clear that Lucy's success is more a matter of luck than skill. But she somehow manages to salvage the situation just enough to avoid complete disaster. The final scenes of the episode show Lucy breathing a sigh of relief, convinced that she has once again managed to pull off a win. Vivian, however, is less impressed, pointing out that while the outcome wasn't a total disaster, Lucy's approach was reckless and irresponsible. Lucy, true to her character, deflects Vivian's critique, framing the entire situation as a success. She once again rewrites the narrative, claiming that her approach was bold and unconventional, and that she was right all along. Vivian, exhausted by this back and forth, accepts that this is just who Lucy is and that there's no changing her. The episode ends with Lucy moving on to the next thing, already plotting her next big adventure, with Vivian reluctantly by her side. This cyclical structure is one of the recurring themes of the Lucy show. Lucy never truly learns from her mistakes, but she's always ready to tackle the next challenge with the same boundless optimism and enthusiasm. This episode, like the others, emphasizes the idea that Lucy's greatest strength is her determination and her ability to keep moving forward, even when things don't go according to plan. Ultimately, episode 4 of Season 6 is another solid entry in the series, building on the established dynamics between Lucy, Vivian, and the supporting characters. It continues to explore the tension between ambition and reality, and the humor that arises from Lucy's unshakable belief that she can always pull through, no matter the odds. Her willingness to throw herself into chaotic situations, her overconfidence, and her ability to survive even the most ridiculous scenarios are what make the show so enjoyable to watch. As always, Lucy may not come out of this episode unscathed, but she leaves with her optimism intact, ready to take on whatever comes next. And that's what makes the show work. Lucy may not always succeed in the conventional sense, but her relentless drive and willingness to take risks ensure that the audience never knows what will happen next, keeping them entertained and invested in her journey. Sure, let's keep it going. As the episode progresses towards its conclusion, we start to see the lingering effects of Lucy's unpredictable actions, not just on herself but on everyone around her. By now, Lucy has created a whirlwind of confusion, but she manages to come out of it with just enough dignity to avoid total humiliation. While she insists on framing the situation as a personal triumph, it's clear that the people around her, especially Vivian, see it very differently. The episode becomes a fascinating study in contrasts between how Lucy perceives her actions and how everyone else reacts to them. Lucy's self-confidence is her most prominent feature, but it's also her greatest downfall. She sees herself as a hero in her own narrative, always the protagonist who comes out on top, no matter how messy the situation gets. However, this isn't shared by those who are witnessing her chaos from the outside. Vivian, who has been part of Lucy's escapades for years, is no longer surprised, but she is definitely worn out by the constant misadventures. She has learned not to expect anything less than chaos when Lucy is involved, and while she does her best to help, she's also fully aware that her interventions often only serve to highlight the sheer absurdity of Lucy's actions. While Lucy is busy rewriting her own version of events to fit her narrative, the supporting characters in the episode are left to deal with the aftermath of her antics. There's a subtle undercurrent in the way they handle Lucy, a mix of exasperation, amusement, and begrudging admiration. Even though they know that Lucy often creates chaos, they can't help but be drawn to her infectious energy and optimism. The characters' reactions, whether they are impressed, confused, or frustrated, provide additional layers to the humor and complexity of the episode. They serve as the perfect foil to Lucy's boundless optimism and determination. As the episode reaches its conclusion, Lucy finally steps back to reflect on everything that's happened, but not in the way you'd expect. Instead of taking a moment to learn from her mistakes, she looks at the outcome through a lens of triumph. She turns to Vivian, offering a smug but content smile, and proudly declares that she has once again pulled off a miracle. The moment is meant to be humorous, as it highlights how disconnected Lucy can be from the reality of her actions. The audience, however, knows better. Lucy's version of events is completely at odds with the reality of what actually happened. Vivian's reaction, as always, is a mixture of disbelief and reluctant resignation. She sighs, silently shaking her head, and acknowledges the fact that there's no use in trying to change Lucy's mindset. She's been through this before, and she knows that the cycle will continue. No matter how many times Lucy finds herself in similarly absurd situations. But despite the frustration, there's a deep affection and understanding between the two. Vivian knows that, in the end, Lucy means well, even if her methods are questionable at best. In a fitting final moment, Lucy excitedly launches into her next big plan, her eyes sparkling with excitement for whatever comes next. She's already thinking about her next opportunity, her next challenge, and the next big thing she can dive into without hesitation. Vivian, with a resigned sigh, knows that there's no stopping Lucy, and she accepts that this chaotic, unpredictable roller coaster ride is just a part of their lives. The episode closes with the two of them moving forward, Lucy at the helm of yet another potentially disastrous adventure, and Vivian reluctantly in tow. In the grand scheme of the show, episode 4 of Season 6 reinforces several key themes that have been present throughout the series. Lucy's boundless ambition, her inability to recognize her mistakes, and her unshakable belief that everything will eventually work out in her favor. While the specifics of each episode may change, these core elements remain consistent, providing a familiar and comforting structure for the audience. What makes the show so engaging, however, is the unpredictability of Lucy's actions and the comedic chaos that ensues as a result. The audience is always on the edge of their seat, unsure of whether Lucy will succeed or fail, but confident that whatever happens, it will be entertaining. Ultimately, episode 4 of The Lucy Show captures the essence of the show's humor and charm. It's a classic Lucy episode filled with misunderstandings, wild overconfidence, and a final resolution that is as improbable as it is satisfying. Even though Lucy's actions often lead her into trouble, her determination and optimism are what make her such a lovable character. Her ability to keep moving forward, despite repeated failures, is what makes her journey so compelling. The episode may not end with Lucy learning a valuable lesson, but it does end with her ready to dive headfirst into whatever comes next, and that's what keeps the audience coming back for more. The cycle of misadventures, each one more absurd than the last, is what defines The Lucy Show, and it's what keeps Lucy's world, and the audience's world, endlessly entertaining.